Hello, welcome to Revenant Reads. I'm Vin, and this is another edition of Fresh Red Kills. So Fresh Red Kills is where I talk about books that I've recently finished reading. And in this case, I have two graphic novels or comic collections. We've got Spider-Man, Birth of Venom, and Batman, Bruce Wayne, Fugitive. Now, my reasons for reading these are, there's two reasons I was reading these. One of them was that, my kids have gotten into graphic novels, gotten into superheroes, and there were a lot of nights where we would actually, I have a king-size bed, and some nights, instead of watching a movie or watching TV, we would just settle in and we'd kind of just lay across the bed and we would read comics. My son, who's 11, he would read something. My daughter, she's 7, she would read Dogman. But we would just read for sometimes a long time. Sometimes just full hour in bed, sometimes longer. And they would never want it to stop. And I was reading some graphic novels, and they were actually, especially recently, it's been sort of a nice mental salve for some of the stuff I've been reading. So I'm not talking about this in this video. I'll make a different video about this later on this week. But this is Bloodlands, Europe Between Hitler and Stalin by Timothy Snyder. I've been doing this as a buddy read with John David, one of my co-hosts for a Storathon. And this is, as you could probably tell by the title and the subtitle, this is a pretty dark book. And it's filled with all kinds of atrocities. And it's one of those books where I'm afraid sometimes of being desensitized by how much death I am reading about. So I will purposely, put it down and give it a breather, then I'll come back to it. Now, I have actually finished reading this, and I'm following it up actually with another book about the Holocaust that I'll make a video about both of these once I'm done with this, and I'm almost finished with this. But I needed kind of a mental break from reading so much about the Holocaust and mass starvation and things like that. So, I was a comic book fan as a kid. I've kind of gotten back into them, especially with my kids getting into them. And it was just a nice mental break. It's not scholarship. It's not a bunch of people dying. It was just nice. So I figured I'd talk about these and just briefly. This is not going to be an in-depth, these are not reviews, really. These are just my thoughts. I'm just talking about some of the things that I read recently. So this one, Batman, Bruce Wayne, Fugitive. This is one that I read first. And this was actually a gift from my son earlier this year for my birthday. So he had gotten me this, and I thought, okay, I got to definitely make sure I read it. This is, as you can see, Bruce Wayne. He's basically been framed for murder. He is on the run, although, he's not really on the run. Batman is still around. Trying to basically figure out who actually killed the woman inside Wayne Manor that Bruce Wayne is being accused of killing. Now, of course, this was not written as a complete graphic novel. This is a collection of comic books that encompass this storyline. So it can be kind of choppy at times. The actual murder has pretty much already taken place by the time this happens, and the trial and all that stuff. So you're just thrown right into the point where, Bruce Wayne has already escaped. He's already on the run. And we meet a woman who has been put on trial and in prison, also as an accomplice to this murder. But that's the first time we meet her. So we don't know any background on her with that. And this was okay. I'll say okay as a collection. By the halfway point, I expected something kind of like, like The Fugitive with Harrison Ford, where Bruce Wayne is basically using his wits and ingenuity to escape the cops without having to reveal himself as Batman. And that's not really what's going on. Batman is just basically still being Batman. It's just he's not going around as his alter ego, Bruce Wayne. And the mystery behind this whole thing is resolved like halfway through this. And the rest of it is just like tying up loose ends. There's not really a mystery, much of mystery involved in this. A lot of it has to do, the real main story arc is an emotional arc for Bruce Wayne, where he has realized that he has pushed so many people aside. And it's him appreciating the people who are around him, the kind of Bat family that he's formed himself with, and trying to make amends in that way. And that's perfectly fine. There is each issue has different artists Some of the artists I was a little bit more crazy about than others. Just to give you an example of some of the artwork in this. Kind of like that one. But you see the artwork varies quite a bit throughout this. I thought that was a pretty cool picture there. And yeah, there's not a lot to say about it. I mean, this is the kind of thing that I enjoy reading once, but I don't see myself necessarily going back to it. I'll probably end up passing this along to my son at some point. But yeah, I'm glad I read it. It was certainly nice of him to get me the gift, and it was okay. You know, it was all right. That's what I'll say about this one. So the other one this is actually a reread for me. This one, Spider-Man: Birth of Venom. I became a comic fan in the early 90s. This was just after Venom had made a big splash in comic books. So, you know, my earliest memories of being a comic fan were really getting into Todd McFarlane. See his signature there. He was really the go-to artist of that day, the rock star artist. And really being into Venom and Carnage and that whole thing. And I would try and get back issues. So I, probably about 15 years ago or so, I had gotten a copy of this that got pretty beat up and almost destroyed. And I read it back then, and this was just kind of a reread for me. And it's, again, this is not a graphic novel in the way that it was intended to be, one complete story. So what you have is several years actually throughout the 80s of Spider-Man getting the black costume, basically using the black costume, realizing the black costume is an alien symbiote, and then you end up having the symbiote story slowly start to take over until it binds with Eddie Brock, and we get Venom. The problem is that the first half, the symbiote stuff is really very much the B, sometimes even C plot of the issues that you're reading. So you have Spider-Man dealing with issues that have nothing to do at all with Venom. And in fact, the first half seems like we're building up to a big fight with the Hobgoblin. He fights Puma quite a few times. But that doesn't ever actually happen in this. It's like explained away on one little summary there. And we have finally in this, well, the other thing I'll say is a lot of the issues, the writing hasn't aged very well. You have some very, very clunky dialogue, very kind of cheesy, dramatic scenes. And again, I understand these are comic books of their time, and I have a certain nostalgic love for them because I read these as kids, but they don't hold up that well as far as aging well. Once we finally do get into the Eddie Brock stuff, we're into the late 80s, and certainly you can see the change in narrative style with the comic books. It's not nearly as wordy. The dialogue does get better. It doesn't really get natural, but it seems to be far more influenced by 80s action movies. It's like with quippy one-liners and things like that. You really see the 80s action film influence in here. But the action is pretty good, especially when it comes to Venom. The fights are pretty good. And very kind of clever resolutions a lot of times with those battles. So this is another one. I had fun with it. It does make me want to go back and read some of the other Venom stuff that came after this, that I used to love so much back in the 90s, so I'll have to track that stuff down. I don't know how much of it I actually have in comic book form. But it's another one that I enjoy overall. My son's really into Venom right now. I think I have that old ratty copy of this somewhere that I'll give to him. And we watched the Venom movie, and for Christmas I got him a double disc with the Venom movie and then the Let There Be Carnage film also on there. So we're going to watch that together this week. And I think he'll have a good time with that. So anyhow, I'm not usually somebody who talks a lot about comic books on my channel, although recently they have been popping up a lot more, and now you know why. So the two that I read were Batman, Bruce Wayne, Fugitive, and Spider-Man, The Birth of Venom. Both of them are okay. That's about it. If you read any of these, I'd love to hear your thoughts. As always, thank you, BookTube.